Hello everyone, and welcome back to another guide video for Fury of Dracula. This video will concern hunter movement in general, but also have a particular focus on fast horses. Now I just want to say up front, with full transparency, that I did not come up with the strategy of fast horses. When I joined the Discord community for the digital edition of Fury of Dracula, it was already a strategy that was already established, and the other players who taught me how to play the hunters were already using this strategy and they explained it to me. Okay, so I didn't come up with it, I'm just purely conveying the information to you. And I know this is a topic that has been discussed in hunter guides, which you can find elsewhere on YouTube and on the internet, but I'm not aware of a video dedicated exclusively to fast horses and hunter movement, so I figured it could be helpful to have a shorter video exclusively concerning this topic. So if you are, a budding Fury of Dracula player, either for the board game, like the physical version, or for the digital edition, and you're interested to learn about fast horses, there's a video dedicated exclusively to this topic, and not having to go around searching in lots of other videos trying to find the information sort of buried within. And you can see that I have a PowerPoint presentation up and running with slides and animations to help guide us through the process. But if you want to listen to this as more as a podcast style thing, then no problem. I'll try to explain things without you needing to look at the screen. Normally I like to have footage of an AI game running in the background while I'm talking, but the last time I tried this for my Advice for New Players guide, which is already out on my channel, I was getting a bit distracted because I was constantly having to click to sort of recognize that the AI had done actions. Like, yes, I know that Seward's picked up a rail ticket, yes, move on to the next player, right? And also in the end, the AI just basically died. Just the game sort of fell in a heap on the floor, and just all the hunters and Dracula refused to take their turns. I was like, okay, fine, I can't be bothered dealing with that today, so I've got my PowerPoint instead. It also means I can show you certain things on the screen, which could be useful. So, without further ado, I have my script, I have a cup of tea, so feel free to go and grab yourself your favourite beverage of choice, and we'll get started with the guide. Now, Fury of Dracula is one of those multifaceted games which incorporates multiple concepts such as deduction, combat, and resource management to a certain extent. I'm certainly tempted to make a video about these multiple facets of the game in the near future. But anyway, one of the key concepts I didn't mention in that list that the hunters have to control a lot is their movement, and also conversely the Dracula player also has to consider their movement as well as how much movement the hunters have at all times. Dracula's movement is, for the most part, quite restrictive, whereas the hunters have more flexibility with their movement options. But they have many other concepts and tasks to juggle throughout the game. However, in order to stop encounters from maturing, finding Dracula's trail, and ultimately catch and defeat Dracula, which is the whole objective of the game, movement is such a critical part and cannot be overlooked. So, before we discuss fast horses specifically, I think an overview of movement is necessary. I apologize if this is going to be extremely basic to some of you watching or listening, but I believe that going through this will make it easier to highlight certain deficiencies of hunter movement, which then can be overcome, hopefully, fingers crossed, by the utilization of fast horses. Right, and I'm only going to be talking about land movement here, I'm not even talking about sea movement, okay? When concerning land movement, hunters have a couple of different movement actions available to them. They can move between adjacent cities by road, indicated by the thin red lines connecting cities on the map. This movement option gives quite a bit of flexibility. The hunters can move wherever they like, but it isn't the fastest way to travel. It's important to realize that this is the same speed that Dracula normally moves. It is of course not impossible for the hunters to be able to surround and catch Dracula by only moving by road each day, but they're giving up their vital day action to do so, which means they might be neglecting other actions, such as supplying or searching for vampires. A good Dracula player should be able to position themselves in a way that the hunters will take a long time, if not never, to land on their space if the hunters are only moving in this manner by road every day. There are 2 copies of a special event card called Sense of Emergency, which does allow hunters to move 3 road spaces at once, but they have to take 2 damage in the process, which obviously allows hunters to close the gap, but it is a one-time use card, and also the hunters have to find the card in the event deck in the first place. Now there is another option for the hunters to move on land, and that is to go by train. You'll notice on the map of Europe used in the game that there is a network of white and yellow lines representing the railways. Hunters can choose to spend one of their already acquired rail tickets to travel a certain distance by train, up to a maximum of 3 white, 2 yellow, or 2 white and yellow combined railway spaces. Now, there are some really efficient railway routes. For example, from Paris to Madrid, which is a route that would normally take 4 moves by road. Another example is Genoa to Vienna, which you can do using 2 yellow railway spaces, but by road it would take 3 moves to do so. Another route I want to highlight is from Munich to Cologne, which you can do using a 3 white ticket, but by road it would take 3 days to move that distance. Furthermore, if you look at the map that's about to appear on the screen, 75% of all the city spaces on the board, indicated by the green circles, can be accessed by a train line. So it seems that wherever the hunters want to go, the train has them covered. Right? Well, it depends. It's not as simple as that. It's like in real life. You can only go where the train takes you. So what you gain in speed and distance, you might actually lose in flexibility. So for example, if you want to go to one of the 12 cities on the main part of the map, for obvious reasons, Cagliari, Galway, and Dublin I'm ignoring here. Okay, if you go to one of the 12 cities on the main part of the map, which are not served by the train, you're going to have to go by road eventually, and then spend time getting back onto the rail line. Moreover, there are some parts of the map which are poorly served by the train. A particular headache for the hunters is the lack of rail connection between Munich and Vienna, even though both have a railway station. So if you want to go from, say, Nuremberg to Vienna, you have to go either by road, which will take 2 turns to do so, or you have to take a long multiple ticket railway journey via Berlin, which would take you 2 days to do anyway. Another example, if you want to go from Salonika to Galatz, in the east of the map, even though both have a yellow railway line going to them, there's no direct north-south connection between them. So by rail, you have to go via Szeged. And apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. Either way, by road or rail, it's going to take you 3 actions to get there, unless you use something like chartered carriage. Other parts of the map are well served by the train, but maybe to no benefit. So for example, if you want to travel from Strasbourg to Brussels, you can do that really easily using a 3 white ticket. Or you could just go by road from Strasbourg to Brussels. Either way, it's still taking you 1 action to do so. So I know I'm cherry picking a bit, and I actually do want to make a video at some point talking about the map and the sort of like the little nuances of the map and things and why it's such a fascinating part of the game. But I feel it's important to realize that saying very basically that road is slow, train is fast is an oversimplification. It all depends on where exactly you want to go as the hunters. There are some occasions when hunters can use the railway and say a card like chartered carriage to devastating effect to catch Dracula. And I will admit that this card in particular is my nemesis. It's my Achilles heel. It's my downfall on multiple occasions. Every time I'm sitting there going, oh yes, I'm on a railway line, but the hunters can never get me from here. And then they get chartered carriage, and then I end up in a 2v1 or 3v1 fight. Okay, so it's something I need to think about a lot more often when I'm playing Dracula. But anyway, moving around the map, either it's by road or by rail, requires a lot of careful thought. And additionally, it's like real life. You need a ticket before you can get onto the train. So the hunters need to plan ahead and get those tickets beforehand. But if they're busy doing other things, for example, if they're healing or trying to search for encounters or trading, they might not have time to go and get a train ticket, and then they won't be able to move efficiently the next day. So there's a lot of things that you have to take into account and think about. So the summary of what we know so far is that roads are slower but offer more flexibility, whereas trains are faster sometimes and they're less flexible. So I know there are C moves, but as I said, I'm not going into this in this video. So it'd be nice if we can find a way of combining the flexibility of road travel but have the speed of rail. Impossible, I hear you exclaim. It is not. Let me present to you fast horses. Da 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 da. Right. Firstly, I think we need a quick lowdown of what fast horses actually are. It is an item card with 3 copies in the item deck. That's important to know from the start, that there'll be one hunter, assuming all the fast horses are retrieved from the item deck, there'll be one hunter that will not be able to have fast horses. You activate the card as a special action rather than as a regular move action. At which point, the hunter in question, who's using fast horses, pulls a rail ticket at random from the central pile of tickets and then moves the number of roads equivalent to the yellow number on the ticket. After they completed their move, fast horses are returned to their hand. It's not a one-time use, okay? So they can keep using it every day if they so wish. Now, at this point, I think we should have a look at the collection of rail tickets to see, how far hunters can generally move with fast horses. Here we go. Apologies for my handmade rail tickets if they don't look good to you. I wasn't able to find a decent image of them to use. Anyway, so there are 16 tickets in total. 3 of them have no yellow number. They just got the number 1 in white. So I'm going to call these, for simplicity, I'm going to call them 0 yellow tickets. It's a bit of a mouthful, but never mind. So we've got 3 0 yellow tickets, 5 1 yellow tickets, and then the remaining half of the deck, so 8 in total, are yellow 2 tickets. That means there is a 50% chance upon using fast horses, assuming all the tickets are in the central pool of tickets, that the hunter will draw a ticket that will allow them to move 2 road spaces, rather than the 1 road space which is done with a conventional road move. Now, if there's only a way to increase those odds, but there is. Each hunter has the ability to hold up to 2 tickets in their hand at once. So, if the hunters always held on to the non-yellow 2 tickets, every ticket remaining in the deck would be a yellow 2. Therefore meaning that every use of fast horses would result in the hunter being guaranteed to move 2 spaces. That's phenomenal. That provides a ridiculous amount of flexibility and distance with their moves. But it also goes against the intuitive way of thinking, right? When you're especially a newer player to the game, intuitively you think, oh, I want rail tickets, but I want the good rail tickets. I want the white 3s, and I want the yellow 2 tickets, because I can travel further. This goes completely against that train of thinking. Okay, they're having to hold on to the bad tickets, and you're keeping the good ones in the central pile. Now, something to realize is because there are only 3 copies of fast horses in the item deck, at least one hunter is going to have to do without them. So perhaps that hunter, the one that doesn't have fast horses, could hold on to 1 bad ticket and then keep a good ticket for them to use themselves. So there's still then a 7 out of 8 chance of getting a yellow 2 ticket every time that hunters are using fast horses, which is still pretty good odds. Now at this point, I should talk about the yellow 0 tickets. If the hunter draws one of these when using fast horses, they still get to move 1 road space, but then the fast horses are discarded. They're not returned to their hand. Basically, the horses die. Therefore, the hunters will always aim to organize the tickets so that their chance of drawing a yellow 2 is as high as possible, but they must absolutely make it a priority to get hold of these yellow 0 tickets and keep them in their hand, and try not to use fast horses until all of these yellow 0 tickets are out of the central pool. I've had multiple games in which I've had maybe 2 of the yellow 0 tickets in my hand, and I just keep trying and trying, but I can never get the last one out. But then, typical, as soon as I try to use fast horses to move, the yellow 0 ticket appears. It's a bit of a troll sometimes, but it's quite a common theme in our games in the Discord community. Now, the other thing which is really good about fast horses is that there are very few ways that Dracula can sort of get rid of them. Now, Dracula using the spy encounter is one potential way to mess with the hunters a little bit, as when a hunter is ambushed by this card, they have the choice to either discard a weapon or show all their items and events, and then discard their rail tickets. Now, normally a hunter will discard their weapon, so this is not necessary, but sometimes they don't have a weapon to discard, or maybe they want to keep their weapon because they're going back to fight Dracula really, really soon. So obviously, if the spy, the effect of the spy means that rail tickets are discarded, that could mean that maybe a yellow 0 ticket or maybe 2 yellow 0 tickets are put back into the central pool, and then the risk of them being drawn when fast horses are used later in the game is increased. Furthermore, if Dracula obtains Vampiric Influence, which is an event card, they can force the weakened hunter to discard their fast horses. However, the weakened hunter, which is normally Mina in this case, may not have fast horses to discard in the first place, or they might have a really powerful event card that Dracula will opt to discard instead of the fast horses, right? Now, obviously, if a hunter dies, they lose their fast horses, but a skilled hunter player will more often than not be able to keep their fast horses really safe once the rail ticket situation has been organized how they want it. Furthermore, I want to make this really clear, at least for the digital edition of the game, these 2 event cards for Dracula, Custom Search and Wild Horses, which trigger when hunters move, do not trigger when hunters use fast horses. So basically, unless Dracula is able to kill the hunters outright, Dracula is more or less powerless to stop the cavalry. Now, when trying to organize fast horses and the rail ticket economy, there are some awkward things which can occur. Firstly, a hunter can supply and end up with 2 fast horses. This now leads to the question, do you try to get that hunter and another hunter that doesn't have fast horses into the same city so they can trade the fast horses across, or do you discard the second copy of fast horses, hoping that you don't need it, right, and you can make do with only having 2 fast horses in play, and hoping that when the item deck resets, if you supply enough, that the fast horses, the third copy of fast horses, is pushed to the top. Sorry, I lost my train of thought on my script. Oh yeah, right. In the most common hunter setup used in the digital edition Discord community, Mina and Godalming start quite close to each other. Here on this map, I've showed it where Godalming and Mina are in the same city. This is my preferred setup. But the more conventional thing is to have Godalming or Mina in Munich, and then have the other one in Vienna. So because they start quite close to each other, and since Godalming draws 2 items per supply anyway, and is therefore more likely to get fast horses, they can easily trade copies of fast horses to each other. The other 2 hunters, which are more separated from them, not so much. What can be even more annoying is when a hunter ends up with 2 yellow 0 tickets in their hand, but they don't have fast horses. So basically, they're restricted to only moving by road, so they don't put the 0 yellow ticket back into the deck. So I don't know, what do you do in this situation? Does the hunter, in this case Van Helsing, by my illustration, does Van Helsing get rid of one of the yellow 0 tickets so they can get a better one, so they can actually move around more and contribute to the game? Or do they hold on to both of them and have their own movement restricted, but then it decreases the risk of the fast horses dying for the other 3 hunters? It depends on your train of thinking. It also depends on the situation. You know, what point of the game are you in? What's going on? All that stuff. It's all very contextual. At some point, you know, you might be able to trade the yellow 0 tickets around, but it could be a headache to organize to do this. Excuse me, especially when, you know, your priority is stopping the encounters from maturing and actually catching Dracula. Maybe while you're trying to get the trade set up, Dracula is just going through Europe doing whatever Dracula wants to do, and that's not what you want to happen. Whew. Okay, let's take a breath. That was a lot of information. You can hear it, my throat's dying. Right, so, that was a lot of information. I hope you're all still with me. The last part of that last section was more about strategy, and each player is going to have their own way of approaching it, and of course a lot is highly contextual for each specific game and the part of the game that you're in and the situations that the hunters find themselves in. One other strategic point I want to touch on is, due to the fact that there are only 3 copies of fast horses in the item deck, is there a preference to which hunters use fast horses? Now, at the end of the day, and you can probably tell by the tone of this video, I like fast horses, and I'll take them on whatever hunters get them. But, if I have the choice, I like fast horses on Godalming, Seward, and Mina. Sorry, Van Helsing. Now, I like fast horses on Godalming because in my usual setup for the hunters, he starts in Vienna with Mina, which means, assuming that the ticket economy is in my favour and I always draw yellow 2 tickets, the vast majority of the eastern and central part of the map is accessible within 2 days of movement, assuming I'm drawing yellow 2 most of the time. Now, the reason why this is important is because often newspaper reports will be used to reveal Dracula's first encounter location on dawn of day 5, assuming Dracula misdirects their starting location. So the hunters then have 2 days to get to that location before the card matures. From Vienna, the only city spaces in the central and eastern part of the map which are inaccessible by 2 good fast horse moves are Bari and Amsterdam, I think. If I've made a mistake, feel free to correct me in the comments below. There are obviously cities further west that Godalming can't get to from Vienna, but that doesn't matter because Seward is there. Seward normally starts, at least in my setup, in Madrid or Bordeaux, so he's in a good position to take care of any cities in that sort of part of the map with fast horses or by using rail. Of course, utilizing a really good rail move with, say, a chartered carriage can mean that no part of the map is inaccessible. Then Bari and Amsterdam are also not off limits to the hunters, but then that's assuming chartered carriage is drawn, and sometimes it's not. Also, since Godalming draws 2 items per supply in a big city, it's more likely he'll have fast horses anyway, so you may as well just get used to using fast horses with Godalming. Furthermore, Godalming has the highest health pool out of all of the hunters, so I actually don't mind him having fast horses then charging into danger to try to track down Dracula's first few encounters, or maybe try and jump onto Dracula's space himself, because he's more likely to survive whatever horrid things Dracula is going to do to him, right? Obviously, I know he can't heal as quickly as Seward can, but still, having that slightly higher health pool can be really useful. Now, Seward having fast horses is good because he has the ability to hold 4 items. So, him holding onto fast horses doesn't reduce his combat strength as significantly as it would do for other hunters. So in this situation here, this is just a random example. Seward has fast horses, he has a stake to deal with any vampires, and then can still hold on to 2 weapons, or a weapon and a heavenly host, for example. Whereas other hunters can't do that. They can only have a stake and a weapon, or if they have 2 weapons or a heavenly host, then they have to get rid of the stake. So yeah, Seward is very well positioned to use fast horses. Lastly, so Mina having fast horses, in my opinion, is great because since she moves last, her having the flexible movement, which means she can hopefully capitalize on other hunters finding Dracula's location, so she can join them for a fight and make it a 2v1 or a 3v1 situation. Also, Mina having more flexible movement to meet up with other hunters easily to utilize her psychic bond ability or hypnosis is really handy. I don't mind Van Helsing having fast horses, and if I get them on Van Helsing then no problem, but since he has the lowest health pool, I'm not so much of a fan of him charging into danger. Also, because Van Helsing, typically in my setup, starts in the UK to stop Dracula players from going to the UK freely, he's not going to have so much of a need for fast horses early, because if something does happen in the UK, he can travel by train, or then he's going to have to go by sea to get across to the mainland. So I'm not so much of a fan of Van Helsing having fast horses. I also prefer Van Helsing just to sit back and supply and to get the items necessary to deal with the encounters that the other hunters have left behind or couldn't deal with for whatever reason. Also, Van Helsing has the ability to trade events, which is extremely useful. One of the hardest things I find to get right when I'm playing the hunters, probably one of the highest, one of the more difficult skills to get right, and knowing which events have to be traded from which hunter to which hunter at what sort of point in the game. Van Helsing being able to sit back, supplying, and also trading those key events between hunters rather than having to move can be game-changing. I've done it on multiple times where Van Helsing does a day trade and a night trade to get an event from one hunter and then to a different hunter, and then it can win the game, potentially. Now, of course, every game is different, and the hunters have to be adaptable to the ebb and flow of the chase, but this would be my preferred fast horses setup. Right. But before I go into a summary of the guide and the list of the advantages and disadvantages of fast horses, I want to highlight Renewed Vigor and how well it synergizes with fast horses. Renewed Vigor allows hunters to do 2 actions in the day phase. They cannot be the same type of action. But here's the thing. the use of fast horses counts as a special action, at least in the digital edition, not a move. So, hunters can combine fast horses with a regular move to move even further than normal. Combining a good fast horse move and a regular... Oh, sorry, if I had a map. Apologies. Combining a good fast horse move and a move by road means that hunters can move from Munich to Verona, for example, which is 3 roads away. Or combining a good fast horse move and a move by railway can see hunters move from Lisbon all the way to Cologne, or even further with chartered carriage. This can really catch a Dracula player off guard and give the hunters a vital opportunity to catch the count. While other things can be done with renewed vigor, such as move and then supply, or supply and then move, holding on to renewed vigor for this type of move where you actually do a double move in the day can really flip the game on its head. That's one of the most powerful things that the hunters can do. Right, okay, we're reaching the end of this guide. I hope it's been informative and I hope it hasn't been too complex. I was really conscious when writing the script for this not to include many other game concepts or strategies, except for those directly involving movement and fast horses. But given everything in this game is very easily woven together and you have to think about multiple things at once, it was really tough not to do so. So I hope it hasn't been too complex, and some of the other things I've sort of mentioned in there, like Dracula misdirecting their first location and all that sort of thing. Hopefully that's not been, and also newspaper reports and all that stuff. Hopefully that's not been too complex. If you have any doubts, leave a comment below and I'll get back to you. So before we finish, a quick summary of the advantages and disadvantages of fast horses. So firstly, the advantages. Positive things first. Number 1. It offers the flexibility of moving by road, but also the speed or distance of moving by train, more or less. It depends on the specific part of the map you're talking about, and I haven't done any solid maths on this, but I reckon the majority of the time, fast horses is advantageous to taking the train. But there might be some situations where it's not, or if you have a chartered carriage, you'd be able to go further. Secondly, fast horses combines so well with renewed vigor to allow hunters to cover even more ground than they would normally. And thirdly, once the ticket economy is organized correctly, the strategy is almost like foolproof. Once the hunters have fast horses, without actually killing the hunters themselves, it is incredibly difficult for Dracula to get rid of them or mess with the hunters' ticket pool. So it's pretty much going to be set for the entire game. It's something that Dracula's always going to have to think about, and gives quite a sort of a big advantage to the hunters. Now, disadvantages. Firstly, you need to draw the fast horses. Sometimes the fast horses are buried at the bottom of the item deck, and if you're not supplying enough, you might not get them. So you have to maybe plan for the fact that you're not going to get fast horses immediately. Secondly, the ticket pool requires a lot of time to organize. Okay, it takes quite a while to manipulate it to the way you want it, where you're maximizing the chance of drawing that precious yellow 2 ticket every time. It all depends. Sometimes the bad tickets all appear really, really early. Other games, the hunters are searching for the last yellow 0 ticket for ages, and it still doesn't show itself until they want to move by fast horses, of course. So the ticket pool is also something that the hunters have to continually manage throughout the game, adapting to their needs for tickets. Sometimes they'll need to ditch the bad tickets because they really need that vital 3 white or 2 yellow ticket on a hunter for the next day. It's about being conscious of it and working on it the best you can and being adaptable to every situation. Thirdly, while fast horses are powerful in terms of movement, they're utilizing a vital item slot. Having more movement means you're giving up a card which could be used for combat, so the hunter's individual combat strength decreases when they get fast horses. But because the hunters have more movement, they are perhaps more likely to be able to get into 2v1, 3v1, or 4v1 situations. Now, is that a worthwhile trade-off? Well, due to how the combat system works, and the fact that Dracula can only target one hunter and all the other hunters in the combat can target Dracula freely, then, probably yes. But a lot depends on how the hunters have coped with dealing with encounters before they have a chance to fight. They might be able to get into like a 3v1 or 4v1 situation, but if they've had to ditch all of their weapons, their only weapon that they've been holding because of bodyguards or spies or whatever, then maybe they won't have a good fight against Dracula, and Dracula won't take too much damage. If a good Dracula uses their encounters well and is always staying one step ahead, the hunters might not ever get a chance, even for a non-1v1 fight. So same thing as before, it's all about being adaptable. Every game's going to be different, so it just depends. And also, and this is something that maybe is a bit of a failure on my part, once you get used to playing with fast horses, it feels weird not to have them. Hunter players should always be looking for other ways to move, in case the fast horses don't come out of the item deck early, or they know when to move, you know, because they have to, or they can sit back knowing that fast horses then allow them to catch up later. I must admit, it's something that I've got a problem with. I become over-reliant on fast horses sometimes, and it's something that I need to do more, especially now that we've got the League of Dracula competition going on. I'm starting to think about the game a lot more sort of critically and looking at the map and always trying to think, do I need a rail ticket here? Is fast horses sufficient? Or I don't have fast horses. Okay, then how am I going to move around? Do I prioritize rail tickets more? All that sort of thing. And sometimes fast horses get taken away from you if Dracula does happen to get vampiric influence or Hunter dies. So it's something you have to be adaptable to and be prepared to take some risks sometimes. Moving with fast horses, even though you've got a couple of those yellow 0 tickets still in the deck, because you need to move, because you need to start getting things done. Anyway, right. Thanks again for checking out this guide. That's the end of it now. So thank you again for checking this guide out on Hunter movement and fast horses. I hope it helps all you budding Hunter players out there, or even budding Dracula players, who knows, because then you'll know what you're up against now. Okay, so you can survive and spread evil across Europe more easily. If you have any thoughts or queries, let me know in the comments below. And yep, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video very soon. Bye bye.